Hello, everybody, and welcome to this JavaScript marathon training. My name is Simone, and I am a software engineer at Digital Labs. You can find me on Twitter using the hashtag below, Zelig880, and you can also contact me throughout this session by posting some comments in the YouTube channel. Before we start, it's time to thank our sponsor, as we couldn't do this without them. The first sponsor is Digital Labs, your partner in modern digital transformation. We specialize in mentorship, consulting, training, staff augmentation for enterprise organization. Find out more at digitallabs.com or send us an email at hi@digitallab. Do you find keeping up with the constant evolving technology struggle? And do you want to bring your team up to speed on one of the latest technologies? Digital Labs offer personalized training programs to suit your organizational needs, ensuring you and your company stay on the leading edge. Contact us today at hi@dis.dot to set up your complimentary needs assessment. Lastly, I would like to also share an upcoming event coming up is a Vue meetup that we do monthly, always sponsored by Digital Lab. This is a very important event. It happens on the third Thursday of every month, and it's actually happening tomorrow. And just to let you know, guys, tomorrow is a very special one because it's State of Vue. We got two of the core team of Vue.js. We actually got even you and Thorsten talking about Vue. I've seen the talks topic. They're really great. So I really suggest you to go on vuemeetup.com and sign up for tomorrow's event. It is now time to start our talk and start our chat. And today we're going to talk about PWA, mastering PWA in Vue. If you have heard about this before, or if you've never done it before, or if you actually used it a little bit, maybe you're still going to find something interesting because PWA is quite a new topic, and quite a few people struggle as there are no many resources out there to find information and to be able to really master it and use it properly. I've used it in a couple of projects, and I usually always like to set up application as PWA because I really think that is going to be the way forward for most of the application. Apart from application that really need things such as GPS, access to camera, and other information that are very complicated or not available for the PWA yet, most of the websites nowadays can be PWAs. For example, Twitter now, PWA, Tinder is PWA, I think Facebook is pushing for PWA. So loads of applications are actually turning into PWA. So really, this topic is really important to be mastered as soon as possible. As with every week, we have a very busy agenda, and 1 hour is quite tight. So apart, we're going to cover just few details, but I really want you to see a little bit of everything to make sure that you're aware of things and how to find information. I will try to share resources as I usually do, and also I will be able to get any messages from Twitter, or if you want to comment straight within the on the video. If you're watching this afterwards, I will usually look at the video and be able to answer your queries. Today's agenda is going to be, first of all, we're going to introduce the Progressive Web App, so the PWA. I'm going to share information on why you should use it, and I also have a blog post that I've written on this because it's very important sometimes to go to your company if you work for someone and trying to really sell the importance of PWA now before it's too late. Next, we're going to install the PWA in Vue, and we're going to show you how PWA is actually installed and organized within Vue. We're going to debug PWA because PWA is a very different approach of debugging. They have some caveat and information that need to be known, so the debugging part is very important. Then we're going to implement a cache. So we're going to add Google Font to our website, and I'm going to show you how Google Font is going to be added to the cache and automatically retrieve from it if offline. And then lastly, if there is enough time at the very end of it, we'll try to create a test notification. So usually you've probably seen those little pop-ups that come up either on your phone or on the website when they remind you 10 minutes to your next meeting, or if you're talking about the game, it will probably tell you you haven't logged in for 2 hours or 10 hours or whatever. Those will be push notification that we can also work out in PWA. So as with all this live event, there's not going to be many slides. So this is actually the last slides that we have today. What we're going to do, we're just going to go through the code, and we're going to go through some of these resources that I have up here to share the information on. The first part is what is PWA and why do you need it? So as I mentioned, I have a blog post on Digital Labs website called History of Mobile Web Development and the Rise of PWA. This is not Vue specific, so you can read it and share it to whoever you want, no matter who is reading it, no matter which framework they use. And in the end, it gives you a little insight of why PWA are really getting traction and why PWA are getting so important. Just to summarize, I really suggest you to read the blog post, but just to summarize, I think there has been a race of, initially 5-10 years ago, there was native apps. Native apps were great, but they were very expensive for companies. So we started and we saw things such as PhoneGap and I don't remember the name of the other one, that they were supporting the development of actually getting cheaper. So people were able to develop one single code base and kind of share it between mobile application and development, normal development. PWA is a hybrid between those two. So it provides you real mobile performance, but actually allows you to write it with the normal HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. What PWA does, it allows you to download a website, because just normal website at the end of the day, download the website, set up as a PWA on your home screen, so you look at it as an app, and then you're able to also work on it offline. So you're able to add offline capability, and you're able to add different APIs. For example, there is a sync API to be able to sync on the background. There is a push notification, as I previously mentioned, and there is loads of different APIs that are coming into place as the progressive web app gets more mature as time goes along. So in the next 5 to 10 years, you will probably see a big move on most websites moving towards PWA. There is unfortunately Apple is not supporting PWA installation easily, as you will probably see on Android. If you have an Android phone and you go on a website such as Twitter, you will have a big banner coming up and say, install this as a PWA. Unfortunately, I know that I'm not sure if it's been fixed, but I do know that Apple was not supporting this very simple pop-up coming up. So there still had to be some struggle. Something very important happened last year is the possibility for PWA to actually be added to the Google Store as well, Google Play Store. So if you're developing a website and you think, wait a minute, if I just do a website or a game with Face.js, for example, if you want to do an indie game, you probably won't do a website because you think not many people will be able to find it. But since last year, you're actually able to push your PWA indie game, JavaScript game on the Google App Play Store, Google Play Store, and this is a very important, very important incentives for everyone to actually move towards PWAs. So that was a little introduction on the PWA, and the next step will actually be on, I'm going to share a bit more of what is the reason behind PWA and their benefits as we go through. But let's go into some example. So firstly, we're going to install PWA in Vue. So I'm going to show you how to actually implement the PWA. If you've heard it before, to actually have a PWA, to actually change a website to be a PWA, you need two things, a manifest file and a service worker. Implementing those and adding this is not extremely complicated, but the service worker can be quite tricky. So luckily, Vue comes up with a very handy tool that is called the CLI plugin PWA. So this plugin that is maintained by the core team of Vue can actually be installed directly from the UI, from the UI that we shared and checked last week. And the PWA is going to the CLI plugin PWA is going to create all the scaffolding necessary for the PWA, and it's going to provide you very simple configuration settings to change the PWA itself. So if I go down at the bottom, you will see an example of a PWA. What you'll actually need to do behind the scene is just setting up a name. And most of these are actually, none of these are actually mandatory. Everything is it already has a default value for it. So as long as you install the plugin, when you build, it will actually automatically create a service worker for you. It will create a manifest file. And in the case in which you have installed the application as a PWA, it also has all the icons necessary for the PWA to actually work out. So we're going to have a go in installing an application with the PWA. If you do have an existing application and you need to add the PWA to it, that's a bit, I wouldn't say it's more tricky, but that's a bit, it needs a bit more of extra work because you will not have the icon for you, and there is a couple of extra dependencies that you need to add. If anyone needs some extra details on that, I'm more than happy to cover that. But for the scope of this meeting, we're going to cover the main installation. So we go back to Visual Studio Code. I do have some file that I'm going to copy and paste just to simplify my demo, and we're going to do the View UI. As you know, I do like to use the GUID provided by the View team. Very good. I think, as with every, we are probably not going to be able to use the slide, but it's fine. We're going to do the normal way. So we're going to call it PWA. I'm going to make it a bit bigger for you guys. Apologies. So very simply, if you've been last week around and you've seen the video, you will probably know that as we went through, we were asked a different question. We were able to make different settings. This is actually the same. You will be asked the same settings, the same information. So we want to use this, and we want to set up a PWA. So as you can see, we're going to select a PWA. And when we're done, we actually press Enter. It's going to ask you again all the same settings that we saw last week on the CLI or on the GUID, and then we're going to say little save, and then I want where do you want to place the information? I want it to be placed in the config file, and I don't want to save this for the future, and I want npm. So again, it's just creating a new project. I will try to see why the UI is not working, but it's just going to create a new project for us. And in the meantime, I'm going to try and see if the UI starts, because in just a minute or so, it's going to create our file. So it's creating now our it's creating all the scaffolding necessary for our project. And because we set up the PWA, as you can see, is also adding information and files regarding the PWA. So I'm trying to run the UI if I can. Okay, it's creating README and everything is done. So just one more go on the CLI. No, it does not. Unfortunately, the CLI has decided not to work, but it's not stopping us. Hang on Edge? No, never mind. So, so what we've done now, we've actually installed the project. So if we go back to Visual Studio, you will see that we have a project installed. We went through this on the first week. So if you want to look back, just going back to look at the video when we went through, we did a walkthrough of the structure of the project. What we need to look today is at files specific to the PWA. The first and most important file will be the dependencies. So when you actually go and in your package.json, you see that there is a dependencies called register service worker, and then there is a CLI plugin PWA. So this one is the one that already I showed you before. I mentioned the reason behind it and the possibility for it to create service workers for you when you build. But then up here, we also have the register service worker. This is another little plugin, always provided by the Vue team. I think even Vue is actually the maintainer of it. And if we go and find a file for you, you are. Yeah, so this is just a very simple script to provide you whole hooks for the service worker. So the service worker work around events. So push notification, sync, and everything else all work out with event. And this plugin actually supports you in having very simple callbacks within those events. So there's an event when the service worker is ready, one when it's registered, one when everything is cached, one when there's an update, and one there is one when an update is actually found, and one when an update is actually downloaded. So when you have a service worker and a PWA in place, if you do have new information on your file, you can set up if the file will get downloaded straight away, or if they actually get just downloaded and put on the side until you decide to update the app. So if you develop your site and your site also uses local storage and a local database for the browser database, you're able to actually organize yourself and do versioning. So again, we go back to a game example. You will be able to have different version of the game throughout, to different devices and just update the device or the game if the user is ready to upgrade or something like that. So these give you a very strong power because it allows you to, to make breaking changes if necessary, because you know that the app will not break for people that already, got cached information, already looked at the if they got cache information, if they've already been through the website and have a PWA installed. Going back to our site, so we have seen the dependencies, the register, and we've seen the other one. And now it's time to go and see what the register service worker dependency actually does, and it's this one. You're able to create this file where we import the register service worker, and we're able to register the service worker itself. So when you create a service worker, you need to register that to your site. And with this file, you actually can do that. And as I mentioned before, you're able to then hook and put some logic behind the scene for when different events happen. Again, this file is useless unless it's actually loaded somewhere. So we're loading this file here in the main.js file, and it's the .register service worker. As you've probably noticed, there is no service worker anywhere, or there is no metadata anywhere. The main reason for it is because they are actually built at build time. Service workers actually just work for SSL for build settings, so it will not work or be developed if we do npm run serve. A service worker just gets generated when we run npm run build. Also, bear in mind that service worker just work if you are if you're going to your application from localhost, or if you're going to your application from an HTTPS connection. So this is I stumbled on this a couple last year in a project, and I did not understand why I wasn't able to actually work out with the PWA on my phone, and things were not working. Is because it wasn't just running as the normal 128.0.0.1, but I was actually trying to run it on the local network IP address. And because it's different from the local host, service worker will not install unless you have an HTTPS certificate. If you come next week, we're gonna explain how to develop and push this application to AWS. And as you do that, you'll also get an HTTPS certificate, so the PWA will actually work straight away. So just to prove the point, we're going to do npm. Sorry, we're going to run the spell it properly. We're going to run the build. You can see there's no disk directory now, and this is going to create a disk directory. build completed, information are all over there. We're going to open up the disk, and what you see is that there is a service worker file. We're going to analyze this service worker file. And as you can see on the top, it tells you that this service worker is powered by Workbox. So the Vue CLI, the CLI plugin for PWA, actually is built on top of Workbox. Workbox is a Google Google plugin that is actually being defined for to support you and take advantage of everything for PWA. So it allows you to actually simply implement pre-caching. It provides you different strategies for caching. It provides you ability to actually to create service worker, load service worker, and so on and so forth. So behind the scene is using Workbox. So most of the configuration that we're going to use are the Workbox configuration. So if we go back here, you can see that the first thing that does is import Workbox. The second thing it does is import this script. Okay, this is a cache script. So this is a file that is automatically being created when we did the build to say these are the files that I want to cache automatically. So if we go back here, you can see that is actually there are different files such as the app.css, the logo, the index, app.js, and this file. So this file now will automatically be cached by the service worker. So if I go to the site again, it will not, and this file don't change, it will not go to the network to fetch them, but it will actually just take them straight from the cache. So your site will be, immediate, it will have a very, very quick turnaround. It will be very, very fast loading. Going back to the service worker, we've seen that he's setting up a cache name details, and we're going to see this later on in our application in the Google Chrome. Another thing that he's doing is registering to an event listener. So as I mentioned before, when you change the service worker, or if you when you change the service worker, or when you change the file, they don't actually get pushed to the client unless you you kind of update. So usually you either have a pop-up, or that's an alert, or there is a button to say upgrade now. And to do that, when you do that, it will tell you that it wants to skip waiting. So this will allow us to actually skip waiting from within Chrome, and allows you to, if wanting to, allows you to have the ability to actually to send a message to wait and to reload the application. These one are just a way to allow to add all the caching methods that we wrote above. Now it's time to go through the next file, that is manifest.json. So this file, okay, this file is actually going to include the name, that is the name of our application, a short name that in our case is similar, theme color. If you go back to the document that I mentioned before, it actually show you what the settings are. So in our case, so theme color, and there is MS style. So these are all information and settings that are are necessary for when you actually download the application on your phone. So it tells you which one is the color you want behind the background, which one is the color you want while the application loads, and all those kind of information associated to the loading of the application. Then next we got the icons. So there are quite a few icons that need to be set. So different pixel density depending from the device in which is going to be to be downloaded. Then you have a start URL, a display. That this is a display setting, so you're able to actually have different displays. So when you open up an app, you can either choose to show a normal app. So with the you can just decide to show the address link up here, or you can actually decide to remove it out if necessary. And then finally we have a background color. Now, to be able to actually work with our application, we will have to have a server. A server that I suggest you to have is actually a very simple Chrome extension called the web server for Chrome. So if you open up the web server from Chrome, the only thing you have to do is choose a folder. So in our case, it's going to be PWA Marathon project disk. And then you're just going to start the server. When you do that, it's going to provide you a link where you can actually go on the site. As you can see, we have our application right here. First of all, even before I do anything at all, I know that this is a PWA. The main reason I have this plus sign up here. So this one will allow me to install the PWA on my desktop. So if I do this and I install it, and I go back on my desktop, you can see that on my other screen, I have a PWA Marathon. If I double click it, it's actually going to open up my application. So as you can see, yes, it does have the headings, but it doesn't have a link anymore and anything else. But behind the scene, if I press F12, you can see that this is actually a normal Chrome bar. So this is a very interesting feature of the PWAs. Seamlessly show they look like application, but behind the line they're just Chrome. So we go back to our application. Sorry. Apologies. We go back to our application up here. We open up the Chrome, and we're going to read around our Chrome tab to actually see what we got. To work with the service worker, you need to go through the application. So up here, and the application is going to have, for being quite new as a feature, they already have everything set up and ready within the Chrome for you to debug and actually use. As I mentioned before, the service worker will just get registered and work if it's localhost or if it's an HTTPS connection. So in our case, if I go here, you can see that for this website, there's a service worker.js registered, and it tells you when is the last time that has been that has actually been received, and it tells you which version is actually running. So you will see as we do changes now, there will be new version. It will tell you version ready to be updated. There's a very simple way here to push notification and push sync. And then if we go down here, you have even more information. So you're able to see all the background fetch that have been provided, the background sync, notification, and so on and so forth. For example, the background fetch, if, for example, you have an application such as Twitter could decide to actually fetch the tweets on the background. So when you actually open up Twitter, you already got new tweets in front of you. Bear in mind that uses battery, so don't overdo this kind of information, and everything will have to be provided permission, as you will see later on during this conversation. So going back to my service worker, I got it activated, and if I click on it, you can see that it's the same service worker that I mentioned before. Something else you may want to see on the service worker is that something that we want to learn is where does the service worker actually saves the file? So how does it know if a file has been loaded, recorded, and cached? If we go in the network tab and I refresh now, you will see that the file we saw before in the file that we saw before in the pre-cache manifests, so the index, HTML, the logo, and everything else are actually not being fetched from the network, but they're fetched from the service worker. So the HTTPS, the JavaScript, and everything else. So if I actually go in the application now and go offline on this tab, you will see that my application loads up with no problem whatsoever because it's actually fetching everything from the service worker. As soon as I go online, the service worker will realize that and will start to fetch information for me. So if I refresh again, as you can see, service worker, so we're not getting information. So we're going to analyze now and show you where this information is stored. And they're stored in the cache. So there is a cache here called cache storage. And this is the name that we have seen before in the service worker as well. So there's a prefix that is provided in the cache. So we go here, and when you click on it, you can see that these are the files that have been saved within our cache. So some files are quite big, some files are smaller, and it tells you when it's been saved. So if you want, you can also set caching that actually expire after a certain amount of time. So in our case, we got this file cached. So whenever we try to fetch them, it's going to have the information and the file over there. Let me check that I've done everything so far. Okay. Now, it is a little bit of the one thing I would say about the PWA is a bit painful. Development is a bit painful because you need to work. You need to you need to work with the build settings. So you are able in Vue to actually, you're able to run build and run, I think it's with watch. But when you do that, everything will work fine. There's no problem at all. But if you do remove, if you try to run the app as offline, with the watch, it's not going to work because the file is same linked and the change. So this will actually fail. I've not been able to understand the reason behind that. So just to bear in mind, if you're doing that, there's nothing wrong with your app. It's because you're trying to do the watch. When you use the watch settings, what it's going to do is actually very similar to the hot reload. It will look for anything that changes, any file that changes, and as soon as it does, it will rebuild it again. So it's very useful for our case. So I'm trying to run it. I think it's watch. I usually do it on the CLI, so I don't remember the actual command. No, it's not watch, but it's okay. We're not gonna do many changes, so it's fine. So what we're going to do now, we're going to change. We're going to make some changes to the service worker, so I can show you how this change actually affects our application. So there are two things that I'm going to do. First of all, I'm going to add an image within my public folder. And then I'm going to, let's try just that. Let's try just the image to see if it actually pushes the. Okay, so if I go here. Okay, so as you can see, we added we changed the service worker. The main reason for our change is because we added an extra image that it has to be cached. So if you go here in our pre-cache manifest, you can see that there should be a new file up here that is the itworks.gif. So because of this change, the service worker noticed that there's some changes in the way in what we want to cache and information we want to do. So it's telling us it's downloaded all the resources. So the resources been downloaded, and they're actually here waiting for us. But as you can see, it's not actually downloading them. So if I go on the service worker, it's still the old service worker. The reason behind it is because we need to actually enable the application to update. And to do that, we can do it in our case with skip waiting. Or if you actually want to implement it yourself within the source register service worker, you will be able to add an alert here where you actually can say, I'm ready to do it now, please. Can you refresh? Or are you happy to upgrade information? So if we do skip waiting, so just to show you, if I go here now and I refresh my GIF, well, my GIF is not actually loaded, so it will not show here. But if I go on the application and do skip waiting, yeah, so the new version has been upgraded. If I refresh now, I should be able to actually see the GIF even if you're not using it. Let me see. Not yet, no. So the GIF is not going to show here because we're not using it, but the GIF has been added now on our cookie storage. Is there. So as you can see, this has been added today at 29:01. I'm in UK, so it's 9 o'clock in the evening here. And this is what is actually, this is being added. So now we have upgraded our service worker for this file. Going back to the service worker, what we want to do now is we want to play around with cache. So Vue comes up with a very strong, very powerful. The plugin that we're actually using for Vue is very powerful. So what it's doing is automatically taking things from the public and know that you may need it. So it's fetching them or it's caching them as soon as you use them once because you expect them to be used again. You can change those. So all those settings are actually changeable. But what we're going to do today, we're going to try and enhance the service worker. So we want our service worker to do a bit more. And to do that, we're going to define a specific settings of the service worker. And the service worker comes with two main important settings. That is, the Workbox plugin mode comes with a setting that is generate service worker and another one that is inject manifest. The one we're currently using is the one that automatically generates the service worker. So as you've seen before, if we go in the disk folder, there is a service worker, but we don't actually have that file. The one that we're going to do now is inject manifest. So what it's going to do, is going to allow us to create a service worker, and the service worker is then going to we can create a service worker with all the configuration and everything we want, and then a build time is going to inject a manifest for us. So it's still going to add all the goodness of automatically caching the public folders and everything that we can actually set within these settings. But on top of that, we're also going to have a power to do what we want with generated with the new service worker. So to add a service worker, we need two things. Number one, we need a service worker to be created in the source file. So I'm going to copy the service worker, and I'm going to put it there. I'm going to make it all, I'm going to comment it out so I can go line by line for you. And secondly, we also need to create a view configuration file. So view configuration file is the one that is going to include all my PWA settings. Because currently we don't have any PWA settings, we don't have this file, but in reality, we're going to add one, and it's going to set a Workbox plugin mode to ingest manifest, and then it's going to set a Workbox option of service worker source that is necessary to actually say where the service worker is. So I'm going to copy this file, just paste it here in the main location. Now we're going to go back to our service worker and see what we're actually planning to do in here. So first of all, we are just we're getting the pre-cache manifest. So these are kind of lines that you will probably are expected to add. So these two lines are needed. See, this is the line where it's actually going to add all the goodness of you. So this is where it's going to add the pre-cached information, the pre-cached file. So these two files will actually be enough to do the service worker. I'm also going to set the debug to true so that we can see more. And now we're going to run the build again. And if everything is correct, our service worker will also have a debug to true. So let's go back to our service in here. Service worker. So as you can see, the service worker has an injected. So this has been automatically been injected. And then we also have a configuration to true and all the rest. So if I go back to my application, I should be able to see that my application is actually changed. So if I refresh here, I should see, yes, it's waiting to install. It's downloaded it. It's ready to actually be installed. So I'm going to do skip waiting, and it's been active. The new service worker has been activated. So if we go back here, because we set the debug to true, now we have information. For example, it's telling you that it's taking these files from the peer caching because we already have them. And then well, that's mainly what it's going to tell you for a Workbox itself. So you're actually able to see all the information within Workbox, and it's also helpful because it tells you if everything fails. So moving along, we're going to enhance our service worker now. And what we want to do is I want to add a Google font. So you may want to add a Google font yourself. So we're going to I haven't. Let's see if I got it here. I haven't saved the Google font itself, so I need to. Well, that's fine. Oh, maybe it's here. Oh, it's fine. Let's find a Google font to download. Let's find one that's quite different. This one. Where is the script tags? No, I don't want to download. Oh, well, as you can see, I've never searched. Here we are. So, Google font. And we're going to go back to our file. Apologies for this interesting. these few seconds. So we're going back to our public, we're going in our index file, and we're going to add our Google font right here. What we also need to do, we have to add this to our font family. So we're going back to our after view. If you remember last time, there's always a font family declaration start, so we're going to do that. We're going back to our application and again, building. Go back here. Oops, yeah. Waiting, skip, refresh. As you can see, our font is loaded now. What you will notice though is that if I go offline and I refresh, magic is working. It shouldn't load my font. That's actually interesting because the font is not actually, so the network tab doesn't show any font being downloaded, but the font is actually showing. So this is the magic of Chrome probably today. What we're going to do is we're going through and add that, those information. So we're adding the font to our cache. So if you go back here, you will see that, that the font is not there. So the font doesn't exist on our file, the file that we cached. So we want to add that specific information. So to add information, we need to go to our our source, service worker, and we need to register a route. So to register a route is as simple as doing this. You can add a regex. So when you add a route, it can be an API, it can be a specific endpoint. So in this case, we're doing everything that is font, I get Google APIs or statics, and then we're going to decide what kind of caching we want. There are 3 different caching strategies: cache first, network first, and stale while revalidating. So cache first is very good for Google, for things such as Google Font. Network first is things such as API. So if there is an API request, you want always to try and do network. And then if you are online, just retrieve whatever you go locally. So you, for example, on Twitter, you go on Twitter, you will always try to get new posts. If you cannot get your post, it'll show you the old post. And then the last one, still while revalidating, is the one for CSS and JavaScript. So the idea is that it will go and try to see if there's a new file. It will check if actually the file is new or not. If it's not, and while it does that, it actually will wait for you. And then you're able to, specify, for example, this is just going to create a cache for a GET request. You're able to get what kind of statuses. This is important because Google Font comes back with an opaque response. So you need to specify that you want to record them too. And then by doing this, it will automatically save the information for the file for us. So if we go back to our again, this is the thing that you will encounter hundreds of times. They will try and see changes, and changes don't apply, and usually it's because of the build settings. So we go here. Now it's ready. I skip. I refresh. I must have used the font that is actually already on in Chrome for sure, because it's not downloading it. So let me see if there's a font here logo. It should be. Yeah, so there's no font here. So I think I have downloaded So to move along, otherwise we don't have enough time to actually complete this. We can see we cannot see, unfortunately, because the font has been preloaded. I do apologize, but by doing what I've just did right now, you will be able to cache any API or any file or anything that is actually important. So this is very useful if you're returning resources from a specific CDN. You're able to add them to the list of files that you actually want to save as well. The next and last part is going to be notification. So notification, now we're starting to go into something that is a bit more tricky to set up and a bit more tricky to use. To actually have a notification, you may need a server on the background. So you may want to set up things such as AWS Amplify or Firebase. Or there are loads of other messaging services that will provide you possibility to push notification to the user. To actually use a push notification, we need to register it first. So we need to actually be able to get authorization from the user to actually use the notification. So you've probably seen it many times when you say allow the website to use your camera or allow the website to use your microphone. Very similarly, we also need to allow the website to actually see a push notification. To actually show the push notification, we're going to, as I mentioned, we need to do the first thing, that is registering to the push notification. So again, I have the file here for us. To register to push notification, we're going to use the notification API. So the notification API has a few methods within that, one of which that is request permission. So we're going to add that when the service worker is ready. So going back to my register service worker, when the service worker is ready, I'm going to add for the request of the permission. Next up, so this is just to ask the permission. So this is going to have a little pop-up to say, do you allow or you disallow the use of the request? Next up, we actually need to have a way for those. So to actually have a push notification works in two ways. The website can push information, and there has to be something within the service worker that get those information and push them over to the application, such as Windows or your phone. If you have Amplify or Firebase will push the notification to the service worker, and the service worker will push it to your operating system. Important for you guys to realize that actually the service worker, the service worker doesn't actually live within your window. So the service worker lives and is actually working and is updated even if I switch everything off. So if you go back here and you see service worker, you are actually able to see a list of service workers that are up and running. And there are quite a few. So these are all the service workers that we have from other things. For example, the Code Sandbox. So if Code Sandbox would like to send me a notification now, they could, because my service worker is activated. In this case, it says it's stopped. So you're able to actually have background information, background fetching. And that's the way, for example, Google Calendar is able to send you a reminder. So Google Calendar is able to send you a reminder of your meeting in 10 minutes. And the reason for it is because when you went to Google Calendar, you probably had a little notification to say, you would like to send information. You said yes. That's at least, in my case. And all that is done by the powers of the service worker that doesn't actually live within the Chrome tab that you can see right now. So what we need to do is defining something in the service worker that is going to listen to this message and that is going to push it to the notification API. Let's go. So we have all the code here. So very simply as JavaScript, we add an event listener, and the event listener for a push notification is push. So we add an event listener for the push notification. The event is going to have some data. In our case, it's going to be a text-based data. So the push message is going to be there. And then I have set up there's just a link being set up. So there's going to be a fake link that is view meetup. And then there's some options. So if I go up here if I go into developer Mozilla, there is a service worker registration show notification. You can see that it accepts some values. And for example, you're able to say the body. So what is actually going to return. You can have an icon, you can vibrate, and you can have images and so on and so forth. Important to realize, no support for Internet Explorer tool for the push notification in this case. So I'm going back to my application, and as you can see, my option is going to have, I'm going to push whichever message I'm sending. I'm going to have an icon that is the logo. So let me see if it's actually, this is going to be different in our case because it's a new application. Oh, same logo. It's going to have an image that is the image that we preloaded before. It's going to have a little vibrate, so it's going to shake, and it's going to have a tag. I don't think I need a tag, but I'm going to leave it just in case, as today some few things are not working. And then it's going to do event wait until, so it's waiting until the event is actually being triggered, and it's going to register. It's going to do. It's going to self-register to the show notification, and it's going to add the notification. So this is going to be my title. This is going to be my option. So this event listener, so this, as I say, it's the service worker listening for it. So in your case, if you have an application on live, you will probably have a, you will be pushing it from a server somewhere. In our case, as I mentioned, it's going to be pushed by, it's going to be pushed to Firebase or AWS, or now we're actually going to be pushing it from Chrome, because Chrome is a very handy tool to test push notification. So when I do this now, the push notification is going to come up on my screen, and I'm going to be able to see it. The other thing that I've also done that I can do down below is ability to register to something else, another event called notification click. So they're actually able to do something whenever a user clicks on the notification. This is very powerful because if you think we're not in Chrome anymore, the website is not even running, but you're able to actually send the user somewhere. So in our case, as you remember before, we saved a click open link. So it's going to be this one. So now when a user click on our notification, we're going to close the notification, and then we're going to open up a window that is the click open. So something as simple as this will be able, for example, to say, hey, don't forget, you haven't been in the game for 2 days, or, oh, you have a new message in Facebook. You click on it, you go straight to your account. You're able to, we would have been able to send this information over with from the text or from the JSON if you wanted of our messages. So this is just for you to show a little, power of the little power of the notification. So now I'm going to save all this. I'm going to run it, and I think notifications are happening on the wrong screen, so you may not actually see them. Let's see if that's the case. Okay, so the application build, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to refresh. You should see that there's a new one. Let's keep waiting. If I refresh again, notification. Okay, so I'm going to allow it now. Don't forget, after you allow it once for a domain, it will be allowed forever. And if you want to remove it, you can just click on here and you can see notifications. So you're able to go and remove it. So if you add more, for example, a video or audio or microphone, they will all be shown and you can change it. So now I got it allowed. So I'm allowed to actually send the notification. I think I changed it. And then if I click on push, I do actually have the notification right here on my other monitor. So let's try and see if I can work the magic of I'm going to do a screenshot. Easier than try and break everything. So I'm going to push. Okay. So my notification was there 1 second ago. So again, very powerful. In Chrome, you're able to actually record. So very similar to what you do in the network tab, that you record information, you're able to record to notification, background, and everything else. So if I go back here, and the notification is actually, if the notification is sent, in this case, I cannot see the notification on the screen, but notification is actually being sent over here. You should be able to see, oh, there's an empty body. Interesting. So we're going to go here. I don't think I'm able to push debug in the service worker. We'll try. Guys, I did mention at the start that service worker are tricky. So we're going to just build it again, just in case. Oh, yes. So at least we see if the debugger works. But we're going to, so the notification was used to work fine. So let's do this. I'm going to reload the app. So it's going to ask me to allow it. I'm going here and I'm going to skip waiting. I'm going to refresh. And I'm going to try and do a push notification. Oh, yes. Push notification stopped, but it's actually, there's no. Okay. Yay. But just to show you that it's true, I'm not actually. So we have our notification. So we have the title, we have where it's coming from. So you will have a link over there. All this is actually, you're able to set it. You have our logo and you have the image. The GIF actually doesn't work. So that's something that I was trying. I wanted to see if you could actually send a GIF from the notification, but it just loads as a single image. So the push notification, is working. And when you actually go down here, you're able to see all the notifications that have been sent, the scope of the service worker, the instance ID, and also you're able to see what happened when, the different events. So this one was the notification displayed event and then notification closed. For example, I'll do something else now. So I'm going to click it again, push it again, and then this debugger is really going to annoy me. I wanted to click on the notification for you to see the actual that it will open up the view meetup page for us. So unfortunately, today's been one of those days. And if you do work on PWA, I can guarantee you're going to have many of these days. Unfortunately, PWA, from the fact that he needs to work on HTTPS, from the fact that he has loads of messaging going on, and it's not simple to debug for the fact that it's sits outside of the browser. Something else as well, you may the service worker, there may be one service worker, but if you have the tab open of the website in different tabs, they will all go through the same service worker if you have the same tab version updated. So sometimes service worker may fail or not work because you have the app actually running on multiple tabs. So it's a bit tricky in the way the service worker works, and there is not many documentation out there to actually support you in making sure that the service worker is set up correctly or that it's working fine. What is important for you to grasp is that it's not too hard to implement the service worker on existing websites such as this one. And I do suggest you all to actually make sure that you get used to the service worker, and you get used to actually apply the service worker to any website you work, because it really speeds up the website loading. For example, in our case, all this is actually fine because I set my application as offline. So if I go here, I want to see a loading time. So look, the loading time of my file, we're talking about 4 seconds, 8 seconds, 8 milliseconds, 3 milliseconds, all that because they come directly from the service worker. There's no need to load them. So even just implementing the default of view will actually support your application on being very, to actually, have a fantastic improvement. In fact, before I go and check for question that you guys are sending, when you actually run a report, if you've never seen the audit tabs, this is very beneficial for reporting and to see if you're, how well your website is doing for everything, for SEO, accessibility, best practices, and one of them is PWA. So if we generate the report, let's see how fast the report can actually work. You will see that it tells you all the information that may be necessary for your PWA to work. So sometimes you may have a missing icon, or sometimes something is not working, or there is something misplaced that it will not work on specific website. The Lighthouse is actually going to tell you all this information for you. So if you're new to this, please go straight away on and use this for you. So as you can see, PWA, let's see how much we did. So So we have a very fast and reliable page. It's installable because it uses HTTPS. So if you didn't know it, you will know straight away the reason behind it. So the traffic HTTP does not redirect to HTTPS in our case because we got this, but we could actually fix it, but it's too late into the thing. And as you can see, we have it provides you very good information, and also it provides you the fact that everything is fast and reliable. So PWA, you will get very good marks. Important to get good marks because Google will then help you in your index. Now the time is up, so I'm going to go and check some questions if there are any. I do apologize for the few hiccups that we had during the session. Again, it's quite hard to, because I've tried this before, so I set everything up today. Some of the things were already set up, and again, it struggled a little bit. The service workers struggle a bit when there are things that go behind the scenes. So there's loads to learn, and I've been using it for over 2 years, and I'm learning as I go along, and I get struggle. So if you do yourself, don't hesitate to contact me on Twitter because I will learn even more, and I'm happy to help everyone. So the plugin itself does not actually, so I'm answering the question over here. So if that's the plugin, also help with caching other type of API requests, such as put and post. So the plugin itself does not, but if we would do something like this, if we go here in our service worker, and say, for example, in our service worker, and you want to actually add, you have an API, yeah? So you want to do this, and you say, for API, you want to do network first, because you always want to make sure, and then you want to say and you want to do my API, and then you're able to say post. So it does actually work. You will have to remove this. So if you go on the, I'm going to show you, there is a file. I did have some resources up here. Yeah, so if we go, I think it's up here. Yeah, no. I'm still validating, so this one doesn't show an example. So if you go and check it out, there are plenty of resources out there with actually that, yes, they support you and they tell you that you are able to do APIs. So I did actually, I did an application in the past where they wanted it was like it was a quiz game. It wasn't a game, but it was a quiz provided by a company, and they wanted it to work completely offline. So what we actually did is that when you loaded it up, it loads all the quiz questions, 40 quiz questions for you. And when you try and play, if you don't have any access to the network, you will actually have the 40 quiz question as a background. So that works no problem at all with just one single line. So I'm not sure about another question from yourself. I'm not sure about caching. I do know that the only way in which people will be able to get information is by accessing by actually opening up the website and going through the service worker. If I'm not mistaken, you're not actually able to see the file yourself. But you're right in the fact that, yes, you will be able to, with a little bit of jiggling, you will be able to retrieve the file by doing a request. So unfortunately, if you're saving the file, you're probably, if you're saving the file, you're probably, it shouldn't be a file that has very sensitive information. If it's by the way, if I'm not wrong, you're able to also pass headings and other information to the request. So if a request needs some specific headings for login and everything else, maybe that one will sort it out. But I've never done it myself for APIs and things that are actually sensitive data. So we're a little bit over 4 minutes, but we did cover quite a few things about the PWA. It is a very big topic. So, for example, we have not talked about background fetch. We've not talked about background sync. There are loads of other things that you may actually work out and investigate yourself. Something else we've not talked about is the different fetching, caching. So I mentioned them, but I haven't really showed them in practice to let you understand what is actually happens behind the scene. But this was an introduction for you to get up to speed, go out there, see all the resources, and actually try to avoid all the mistakes that I did, such as HTTPS, the trying on mobile, and everything else. So thank you so much for everything today. I'm sorry that I'm a little bit blurry at the start of it. I think my camera had enough for today. And I really hope to see you next week, where we're going to investigate we're going to push our application to AWS. So we're going to push it to AWS Amplify. So it's going to be really good. And I really suggest you to learn that, because it's very quick and it provides you to push your application to production in minutes. Thank you so much for joining, guys. Bye-bye.